Okay, you're live.
We're live. Live from Mount Shasta. You almost missed it. We almost didn't even have a show tonight. The Golden Eagle show was going to be canceled. We were going to have the Lamina Cat show. But she just walked off the set. So you're stuck with me, Golden Eagle. So was the map helpful? The map.
Yeah.
I sent a map with the announcement today.
I didn't get the map. I just got the galaxy and you are here.
Yeah, those two now.
That's a map.
Okay, got it.
It's a picture of a galaxy and a little dot. That's our sun. You are here.
I liked it.
Okay. Is it helpful? Can you find
Yes.
your way around the galaxy now?
Yes.
Okay. Because I really put a lot of thought and effort into the images when I send these announcements out. It's something you need. It's something you need. A
Yeah.
map, galaxy, and where we are is one of the important key things I want to talk about tonight.
And it was very humbling to see how little we are in comparison to
But-
the vastness.
The vastness of space.
Yeah.
The vastness of the vastness.
And humans think that they're so important. I go, well, in the big scheme of things,
The big scheme of things we're tiny, but in the tiny scheme of things we're big. Right? How many billions of particles make up each human organism? We're really important. The universe is important. Oh yeah, and something about we're supposed to work together. I think I read that somewhere.
tell the politicians.
Or maybe I made it up. I don't know. Maybe that's just one of those wild daydreams I had once. Nice beverage. Well, cool weather has finally arrived in Mount Shasta. This morning we recorded our first temperature down in the 20s. 24 degrees Fahrenheit here. That's a negative number if you're in the Celsius scale. That's like -3 Celsius. Just off the top of my head, ballpark kind of figure numbers. But yeah, it was our first really cool morning. I wouldn't go so far as to say cold. So where we are, we're on this rock, right? Remember, you're
Third rock from the sun.
third rock from the sun. Exactly. Ding. Ding, ding. One ding for each rock from the sun.
She got 3.
We're on this rock. You're a meat-covered skeleton being driven by a ghost, hurtling through the vastness of a galaxy around a medium-sized star. And it's that star and this little rock we're on and its location in that galaxy that are very key to why you're here. Why you are here is what we're talking about. Why we are here individually, why is humanity here, why is this planet even here? And why was it put here as opposed to somewhere else?
Oh.
What is unique about this particular place in the space-time continuum? That's my question. Does anybody have an answer or a
Because
thought?
of the sun.
Okay, what about it? There's lots of other stars. We could have been around other ones.
But it doesn't radiate the heat and the light like this one does.
Well, some are hotter, some are cooler.
And there's oxygen on Earth.
And there's oxygen other places.
It must have been chosen to be a good host for us humans.
Ah, but why? Why? There's something unique about Earth, and this is key. I want you all to start thinking about it. All of you out there in internet TV land too.
Well, Native Americans say Earth gives us everything, like the food and everything, oxygen, plants, trees, all the animals and
Okay.
water.
Let's take a step back and walk around the side and look at this stage from a different direction. Okay? If we didn't have everything we need, we wouldn't have life. Okay? So yes, any planet that's going to support life has to provide everything the life needs. But why here, why now? What's different?
Space-time continuum is kind of a broad subject area. Can you narrow it down what you're going for?
Quantum physics?
Why aren't we on another planet around another sun living a different life in different avatars?
Because we chose this lifetime.
I think it's because of our biological machines.
Well, yeah, these biological machines have been very carefully crafted for a very specific purpose. That's the closest thing you said. That's a ding.
Yeah, what?
There's something different about this planet, and there's something different about this exact time on this planet.
Because it's evolving as well
There you go.
as humans.
Yes, this planet is a living organism that has a really bad case of humans right now. You know, those nasty little parasites, you just gotta scratch them off. And I think that's what the planet's about to start doing. Right?
It already is, supposedly.
But the
Starting.
thing of it is the conditions on Earth are extreme. It goes from very, very hot to very, very cold, very wet, very dry. We have volcanoes blowing up. We have droughts.
Fires.
We have fires. Well, there's natural fires, and then there's the unnatural ones being created right now, which is another story for another day.
Earthquakes, tsunamis,
Earthquakes, tsunamis,
hurricanes, tornadoes.
hurricanes, hurricanes. Yeah, they name after both men and women now, so it's hurricanes and hurricanes.
I didn't hear that one. That's great. The first time I heard it.
Really? I wish I could say it was original, but I've been using that one for about 40 years now. Probably even before high school, probably even in junior high I've been using that joke. Even, let me tell you how old me and that joke are. I was using that joke back when they still named hurricanes only after women. Right? That
dating
last
yourself.
millennia kind of stuff, right? That's a long time ago. Maybe this show will just be about me sipping tea and enjoying it.
Apparently you like your
Apparently.
tea
We
today.
need, we need the cat now.
Yeah. Maybe Mina will pull out of you some answers that I'm failing to pull out. So, do you recall anything at all these last couple of episodes since we started talking about the humanity experience, about talking about the purpose of humanity? What did I say? I know what I said. I'm seeing if you remember what I said. This is a test.
What our purpose is, our destiny, is to upgrade our consciousness and our destiny
To
for humanity.
do what for humanity?
Upgrade humanity collectively.
For some other
Consciousness.
purpose?
Transformation.
Of
Consciousness.
Humanity.
We're failing.
You've been talking about a lot of stuff. I haven't seen a thread yet.
Okay. Do you recall the part where we talked about nice outfit? By the way, I like your outfit. You look hot tonight.
Okay.
Good thing I'm married.
Oh, look at this. Is that
What's up for you?
for him? Two blue lights, distract her quick.
It's like my students when I was teaching college, right? They did something wrong or rude or bad jokes or whatever, interrupted me somehow. Oh, I'm sorry, Professor Cage. You're not mad at us, are you? I was like, I don't get mad.
I get even.
I'm the teacher. I don't even get even. I'm the teacher. I give final grades. I have no need to get mad.
Scare the shit out of them.
Boy, usually within the first couple of weeks, that one would come up, and then it's like, no, you get the grade you earned. I'll give 100% A's in the class.
If everyone laughs.
Everyone laughs at my bad jokes. I handed that out first day of class. Laugh at the instructor's bad jokes. So we're trying to create a universe. You think the universe already exists, but it's barely been started.
So you're talking about that collective organism thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
The universe as an organism isn't fully created and it isn't fully alive, and our job is to help. We need to become creators.
so we gotta recreate the tonal.
We have to not so much recreate the tonal, it's finish the tonal, it's push the boundaries of the tonal, we need to become, to attain the qualities that would normally be ascribed with gods. It sounds presumptuous to say, yes, we're here to become gods, but that's what we're here to do. So that's what we're here to do, and the way we do it is we put ourselves into the fires of transformation. Right? This is what humanity's all about. This is humanity in a nutshell. Although, there is one observation that anything that can be put in a nutshell probably belongs there, meaning it's all nuts. But that aside, the concise version of humanity is we're supposed to become gods so we can help finish the universe and turn it on. And we need gods down here in the physical plane to do that because it can't be done up there in those high frequency realms, the diffuse part of the universe. We're needed down here. Okay? That's what we're here for. So everything we're doing on this planet is towards that end. So the conditions here are harsh to create tension, to create friction, to create opportunities for transformation. If you have a cold forge in your blacksmith shop and there's no heat and the lumps of coal are just lying there and the piece of iron you're trying to forge into something made out of steel is there and all the ingredients you want to add are all there, and all there, but there's no heat, what happens? Nothing.
No.
Ding. Nothing. You need that heat, you need that friction, you need that tension. You need voltage driving a circuit. Now go throw the switch on that power supply over there, or the power strip, all those lights go off. Right? Because there will be no voltage driving the bulbs up there, illuminating my beautiful face. That could be a good thing. There could be people watching right now who say, yeah, turn those lights off. Please, turn those off. But that switch, it's okay. That switch doesn't control the microphone. So you're still stuck with my voice. You might as well see my beautiful face too.
So there's the actual mechanics of turning off and on things, but there needs to be motivation. So,
Good
you know,
point.
that's where the intent and attention
Right.
come in.
Yeah.
If nothing else, if even when we're doing our mundane stuff, because
This thing that I'm describing to you, this is what I was asked to remind you of tonight. This makes everything else irrelevant. The political spectrum, fashion, movies, music. Do they even make music anymore? I'm not out there in the world much, but I've heard a rumor that there is no more music being made. There's just noise. So, yeah. Back in the old days, let me tell you. About in the old days here, whippersnapper. We used to have something called music, and there were musicians and bands and orchestras, and it was marvelous. People knew how to sing more than 2 notes. It was incredible. You should go back to last century's archival tapes in the museum, and you should listen to some real music.
And you can understand every word they said. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
I
too many.
understood
That's not
that.
good. That wouldn't make it in today because I use like 4 notes. And, you know, more than 3 is the upper limit.
That was shaman rap.
Yeah, shaman rap. So, the humanity experience is about remembering what I just told you. And not remembering the fact that I told you. It's going within yourself and remembering truly who you are, where you came from, and why you're here. Now that's a difficult task because of the harshness of this culture and how far most of the cultures on this planet have strayed from being connected with the truth and being connected with source, and that most cultures aren't teaching their children to remember. It's a lot easier if you teach them as soon as they come in, continuously throughout life, and they never have to forget and try to remember later. It's that forgetting and then remembering later that's hard. And we do that as individuals if we aren't raised right, and I'd say 99.9974265% of humanity wasn't, of humanity that's alive today, wasn't raised correctly to remember your purpose and why you're here and all of that. So everything else we do in an esoteric school, in a shamanic school, in the New Age material, in wherever you look, ultimately, if it's legitimate material, it's designed to connect you, teach you the techniques to connect you back with that source. To go direct, to talk to God and all the other ascended beings out there, to learn to travel and talk on all the higher planes, and finish this work that we're part of. If you're ever a part of a spiritual system or attending a workshop or a class or studying with a guru and they tell you, oh no, you're not worthy to go direct. Oh no, you can't do that. Oh, don't look down that hallway. No, that's a bad hallway. You just trust me, just look at this little piece right over here. Run away, do yourself a favor, because they're trying to mislead you. And there's a lot of deliberate deception taking place out there in the so-called New Age community, deliberately intended by people who know exactly what they're doing to steer you away from the truth.
And to get money out of you.
Oh, that's just a cover, right? They don't really care about the money because, yeah, they'll use your money. They'll be happy to take your money. But no, what they're trying to do is keep you from going direct.
Yeah, you can only do it through the guru.
Right.
Keep you enslaved.
Or the priest,
Yeah.
or the cardinal, or the pope, or,
The husband.
yeah. Whomever. 4,000 years ago it was only through the priestess. Now it's only through the priest. You know, we alternate which gender gets to lead and suppress the other, when we're really supposed to be working together. It's not rocket science. And I get to say that. Rocket science is easy compared to undoing the deceptions of the dark side. I've built lots of rockets, most of them successful. Launched a lot of satellites. That was easy. And as hard as it was, and it was hard, it was easy compared to undoing the mass hypnosis of millions and millions of people. By people who have technological advantages on how to inflict mass hypnosis on millions and millions of people at once. And there's a secret. Now, I've talked about turning on the universe. The best way to turn on your universe is to turn off your television.
Don't have one.
Yeah, I don't believe in television. So I needed to get that out. So there are conditions present on Earth right now that only come around about every 13,000 years or so. We're passing through a region of space that the scientists are calling the photon belt, if you can get any of them to even talk about it, because NASA has told them don't talk about it.
Why?
Because it's all part of the material that's out there that basically undermines the conventional party line story of what humans are and what we're capable of and what we're limited to.
Well, isn't it part of it is they claim they don't want to cause mass hysteria. And it's kind of the same phenomenon that happens with tsunami warnings. I mean, when there's an earthquake, you really have only a couple minutes to warn people about tsunamis. And yet, for the majority, they haven't in the past made warnings up until that bad one in '92, that because they didn't want to unnecessarily scare tourists away and all of those kind of things. And so that's the guise, I mean, as to, we don't want to tell you that there could be an asteroid that's going to come and destroy the Earth because it may change the way that you act. First, you could get too freaked out, you could get too involved in science and politics, and we don't need every welfare mom weighing in on asteroids, right? That's the kind of logic that they use, as to why they keep us in the dark. But then at the same time, they're developing weapons to blast an asteroid out of the universe and not necessarily asking our permission as to...
Right, there's a lot of things being done that, it's like I see all this stuff. Well, Bill Gates is doing this and Bill Gates is doing that. It's like, I didn't realize Bill Gates was a country.
Right.
Apparently he is. And he's out doing stuff. So maybe we should declare war on Bill Gates. We should tell the Pentagon that Bill Gates has oil and we need to declare, and he needs some democracy. And look, go declare war on Bill Gates and that'll end the Bill Gates problem.
I actually posted a comment on that. It was Bill Gates said X, Y, and Z about immunizations and GMOs and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, really? I didn't realize that Bill Gates was a scientist and a nutritionist and, a doctor. And
he was, last millennia,
right.
He was a reasonably competent computer geek.
Right.
But the technology has so far outstripped us that he's not even a good computer geek anymore. That's what's funny about Bill Gates.
I have a question I'd like to ask about the Forge. Is there a way that collectively in the Toltec tradition that we could turn up the Forge on purpose for humanity, for the people that aren't getting it? Or is that...
Maybe that's what we're already going through?
Well, I know that we're going through the Forge, but...
No, I mean, humanity is...
Yeah, but some people, for the unconscious one, to purposely pick it up.
There's a boundary in terms of ethics.
Mm-hmm. It goes about true will.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah. That's the same reason they don't let me take off heads anymore.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can force people to Christianity by the sword, but...
You don't change their beliefs.
Right.
Yeah.
So, just a couple comments about stars and planets. Stars and planets are sort of like portals into the mind of God. They're kind of like accessing through the assemblage point for a given solar system. They're passing through the star is like passing through the assemblage point beyond the veil into that infinite chaos. Planets are kind of like the fruit of a tree. This is a metaphor. And they slowly mature, and then they ripen, and then they open, and then something else comes out. And it's like those Russian dolls, right? You open, and another one comes out, and it grows, and then opens, and another one comes out. It's sort of like a multi-stage caterpillar metamorphosizing into a butterfly, metamorphosizing into something beyond that.
So what do they ultimately become?
Well,
That's still in the unknown, right? What humanity
Well,
could become.
what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to impart a better appreciation for this planet we're living on. It is a living being, and it's metamorphosizing. And when it changes, it will only be able to support the life of creatures that are compatible with the new configuration of the planet. If we want to keep up, then we have to change. I've talked about the fact that these biological machines, this is over the last couple of weeks, this is mostly, I've talked about this in this series that we've begun. The biological machine has a nervous system and connection to light bodies in a scientific configuration that is most compatible with this planet, this star, and you just pick us up and stick us on another planet, and our essence, our eternal essence, would have to start its evolution all over again, using some other new type of biological avatar. So that's why we really want to put effort into getting this right.
So the Earth's evolving, and if we don't evolve this as in the same frequency, that's what the masters are talking about, that there'll be people not at this, humanity that's not at that frequency will literally leave.
Right.
Because they can't exist here anymore.
Yeah, and then wherever they go, they're basically starting over their own growth and evolution. So when we look at the billions of people on this planet who are here now, this is such a rare moment in the lifetime of a planet and the evolution of a species to have these major periods of potential upgrade. The one thing that we need to be doing is working together. And the last thing we need to be doing is fighting each other over especially petty and stupid,
Yeah.
ridiculous things.
Because it's a distraction to the work.
You're wearing the wrong color shoes. Didn't you know this was a cult? We wear black Nikes with white
Yeah,
stripes.
matching Aria.
Right.
Oh, okay. Maybe I got the wrong one. No, but you see how stupid that is, right? Yeah. Let's argue over the color of shoes.
I did get the black memo though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous to watch humanity waste away, waste this opportunity. It's absolutely sickening and saddening. Who's online? Who we got?
We have George.
Hey, George.
Hey, George. And Mohammed has been in and out. She's been driving and she's picking up Serenity and then,
Ivy,
then when, so I don't know if she's back yet or if she can hear us or what. So, that's all that's here today.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's it so far?
that's it, yeah.
no Maria, no Will.
Yeah.
Or
Maria,
Patricia.
no Will, no Patricia. Huh,
So,
okay. I
how
hope
do
they
we,
watch later.
how do we know what frequency the Earth is if we intentionally and with attention are trying to match her?
Talk to her. Just talk to her and say, hey, what do I need to do to be, she okay? Oh, do this, do that, stop this, stop that.
Well, it seems like it's less about achieving a certain frequency because it's in the process of increasing. I think in general, we want to be increasing our frequency. You know,
Right.
the ability to handle higher frequencies or more radiations.
As
right?
well as attention and intention to increase that.
Yeah, well, so, but the thing is you know how like when we go through an intensive, it's all fine and wonderful to be there and go through that, but then, you know, when you're out of that secured space,
Mhm.
it's hard to maintain that, so we kind of like go up and, but then we have to, you know, even out for a while and then we go up again. But it's the fact that I think that you're aware, right? That you're even attempting. I think being like here by Mount Shasta, exposing yourself to higher radiations, you know, sitting with gurus who are channeling higher radiations. Those are all things that we could do. But I think too, we have too, like the Blissnellies who have this, you know, off the charts energy that's not realistically in where the Earth is at. I mean, it's like that's not everything that's coming down right now.
And they're not grounded either.
Yeah, the Blissnellies, the New Agers, the feel-good fluffy stuffers, as I call them, they want to feel good.
Mhm.
Doing the real work is intense.
Mhm.
It's hard. You push yourself. And you will be uncomfortable. I guarantee it. You can't transform and stay comfortable. And as long as there are teachers and Blissnellies out there trying to convince you that the right answer is to stay comfortable all the time and don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable, you know, they're leading people astray. Now, by uncomfortable, I don't mean do anything that contradicts your moral standards. I mean, you know, it's like you want to become an athlete, you want to run a marathon, but you don't want to walk any further than from your couch to your refrigerator. Those two aren't compatible. You have to push yourself, right? It doesn't mean you have to go shoot yourself up on steroids to run your marathon. It just means you've got to start slowly and you work at it and you get it to the point where you can walk a mile and then where you can run a mile and then 2 miles and so forth.
What was that quote you said a couple weeks ago that you have to do the work, there's some assembly required?
So go watch the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what he said.
I said something about that all the time. Yeah, there's some assembly required.
And you have
You have to
to
work,
do the work and,
it's like running wind sprints at the end of football practice. You know, you just worked your tail off for 2 hours and then coach says line up, right? And you got through it. And you run however many you think you are and some pretense of an excuse will say, okay, 10 more. And then 10 more.
oh, here we go.
Well, what did I say?
Be willing to work, let's see. Oh, be willing to work, let's see, can't cast it away. Can't wish it away, have to be willing to work it away.
Okay. That sounds like something a a brilliant, intelligent person might have said. Instead, it was me who said.
But you are brilliant and intelligent.
So you keep pushing yourself harder, right? You get into that fourth quarter, second half of the fourth quarter, you got 80 yards to go and you're down by 4 points. Who wins that battle is be the ones who can gut it out and tough it out the most, right? You know, you're in battle. The enemy is going to keep coming until you destroy them. You're climbing Mount Shasta or any other big peak. You get halfway up and you go, oh, yeah, I'm tired enough. I think I'll turn back. You don't make it to the top. The view at the top is worth every bit of sweat and effort.
It's like the difference between a government job and a contract work.
Yeah.
Where you get paid just for showing up versus
Having to produce something. So this work requires work. And by the work, I mean humanity. You're here on a special assignment. And they are trying really hard to keep that information from you. We have, I created this years ago. There's a Facebook group I have called What We Know. And the premise of the question is, what if what we think we know isn't what we really know? Meaning, for everything where we think we know this is the state of the universe, there's additional knowledge that's mostly being suppressed that makes all the existing models obsolete. Power, energy, transportation, medicine, healing, spirituality, our true history. Who discovered America first? Was it the Columbus or the Vikings? How about 50 other cultures around the world over many tens of thousands of years? Oh no, that date is forged. Right. So we have petroglyphs here in North America, carved in ancient scripts from both Asia and Europe and the Middle East.
And Egypt.
Yeah, that's the Middle East.
Yeah.
That are styles of writing that weren't discovered over there, like say in Middle East, until 50 or 100 years after they were discovered here. Ancient styles of writing that have been out of fashion for over 1,000 years from China, carved on rocks here.
Maybe they were here first and went over there.
Duh! Lots of people here. China was here, Japan was here, India was here, the Polynesians were here, Africans were here, Middle Easterners were here, Europeans were here, the Phoenicians were here. Why don't they want you to know that?
oh, come on.
And the Mayans were here too.
Well, the Mayans were from here,
Yeah.
but Mayan culture was heavily influenced from India and from the Toltecs, which means Atlantis. So the conspiracy to cover that up is old. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, right? That's more than 500 years ago. And the conspiracy to hide everything that happened before that existed from that time. King Solomon's mines were in North America. Oh, King Solomon's mines, he got his gold, his jewels, his this, his that, his copper, his bronze, whatever, right? That was from North America. It wasn't from Africa. There is a concerted effort to keep our true history from us. True humanity. And I'm not just talking the last 500 years since Columbus unleashed the new wave of everything that's gone on in North and South America that has resulted in environmental destruction and social destruction. I'm talking about the history of what came before that and what came before that. Because that's really the key. There have been several near golden ages on this planet. And then several great wipings out and falling down.
Like the Dark Ages.
Like the Dark Ages was one. Like the fall of Atlantis was a really big one. And there were more before that, going back many tens and hundreds of thousands of years. The Sphinx is over 800,000 years old. That's been scientifically proven.
So who really built it?
Oh, it must be the aliens. I saw this documentary called Ancient Aliens, and aliens did everything. I'm not saying there aren't aliens. I'm saying don't sell humanity short.
But it was a more advanced humanity who made those things.
And we've experienced a great forgetting. There's a block into the human collective consciousness that has probably divinely been placed there. You know, it's sort of like when the children are really bad and you take away their Game Boy. It's like, okay, I'm taking that away until you get these basics mastered, and then you'll get the fancy toys again.
Supposedly the Anunnaki did that.
Well, the Anunnaki, the best thing I can say about the race known as the Anunnaki is they're probably not our friends. They've been involved in human history, but so have other off-Earth races, and so have many other levels of divine beings. And we're not going to talk about them today.
Okay.
Today, our effort is to wake you up to the reality that humanity is something far greater than our culture would have us believe, and far more important to the universe. Most people have no idea that this cauldron called Earth, I think of it as like a university. It's hard to get into. Right? It's like an Ivy League school, or the way Berkeley or Stanford were back in the olden days when they were good universities. Where, yeah, there's a lineup and a waiting list of people wanting to get into University Earth, because that's the fastest way to accelerate progress. That's why Earth is considered a great experiment.
Now, are you strictly speaking at this point of incarnated souls wanting to come in and do those things? Because it seems like, without going into the alien discussion, it seems like there's a lot of other interest in the Earth itself besides humanity.
I'm mostly talking about humanity. Okay. There's a lot of interest in Earth because it is at a unique place in space. The physical conditions are here are such that others can use it. There's good, okay, here's the bottom line on the other thing. There's good aliens and bad aliens. There's good interdimensional beings and bad interdimensional beings. There's good humanoid-like creatures incarnated on Earth. There's bad humanoid-like creatures incarnated on Earth. And it all gets kind of jumbled up. And part of your job is to learn discernment, to know who you're talking to, who you're working with, and who you're working for. It's sort of like when Woodstock happened. Some of us were alive last century when there was this big, huge concert in Woodstock, New York that just kind of materialized. And it became synergistically bigger than anyone could have ever anticipated. They ended up with like 5 times the number of people that they thought were going to be there. And all the big names were there, right, in terms of rock and roll performers. But it took on this life of its own. And the promoters at one point completely lost control. They had no way of controlling who got in or out. Most of the people who went didn't even pay. You know, they had a few first aid stations, a few food stations, a few places where there were, you know, lavatory facilities set up. But mostly it was this big mass and throng that was just, it took on a life of its own. Completely outside the control of the promoters, and there was nothing they could do except as close as possible stick to the schedule of who was performing when, and when it was all over and everything filtered away, then they clean up the mess, right? So that's a little bit of what's going on Earth right now. Is the promoters had an idea, and we're going to set up these classes, and we're going to set up these conditions, and we're going to train this up, but there's been a lot of outside interference and people cashing the gate and stuff taking on a life of its own, and there's no real way to keep it all straight. So you want to get through the mess and come out the other side with all the skills you came here to gain and to accomplish what you came here to do, then it really, a lot of it's falls on you. You got to learn how to figure that out. So you're like the wide-eyed teenager wandering around Woodstock. You don't know where the food is, you don't know where the bathrooms are, you hear the sound, it's over that hill somewhere, and you're trying to figure out who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, you know, who's got the good drugs, who's got the bad drugs. Where can I go pee in private? Well, I can't, so I'll just pee right here, and everybody's watching me, and everybody else is doing the same thing. So that's kind of what we're at. We're on Woodstock on steroids. That's kind of what's going on Earth right now. And I don't want to try and filter out all the mess and explain it.
Well, I think where you originally started to answer the question, it's almost like as above, so below. So if we think about, okay, well, let's just focus on the human. I mean, you said good and bad, but you know, I mean, I think it's then there, you know, you talk about these different levels of you know, yeah, that's all there, but this is what we have to work with is the machine.
Right. So that's really what it comes down to, is don't be distracted by all that Woodstock that's going on all over the planet right now. You're here on a mission. That means you got to walk around the set and find your script that got laid down someplace hidden just for you. You need to engage in the process of transformation. Upgrade your nervous system, upgrade your consciousness, upgrade your light bodies. Tune in, do what you came here to do, assist in a much bigger and more important work than worrying about, did I sort my trash properly in the trash bins at Woodstock, all of which are overflowing into one big pile. And I mention this history thing because that can provide clues. The knowledge that is most suppressed, that they most don't want you to know, holds clues. If you never look there, if you never go there, you're going to miss something. So there's,
oh,
go ahead. If you have a question, go ahead.
so we must research the photon belt.
Sure. Why not? That would be interesting. NASA's known about it for a while. They've known about it at least since the time when they decided Pluto wasn't a planet anymore. Why would they do that? There's one you might want to research. Why would they decide that this planet that they went through 50 to 75 years, somewhere it was 1920s they discovered Pluto. Its existence was predicted by the gravitational perturbations of Uranus and Neptune, the two outermost planets. They said something's got to be pulling on it, and so they looked at the errors in the orbit. You know, like, it's supposed to be here, but we see it over there. Now it's supposed to be here, but we see it over there, right? It's certain times these outer planets would speed up and slow down, apparently, depending on which way Pluto was pulling on them. So they said, oh, well, that's interesting. And somebody computed, was it Percival Lowell who did this? Discovered, I think so. Somebody who's online will probably type it. Who discovered Pluto? I think it's Percival Lowell was his name. Computed, well, it needs to be right about there. You know, he's looking at a star map. It's got to be right there. So he mapped out the part of the sky he wanted to go search for something. He's looking for some kind of a small faint object in the star field here that's not on the star map. Because the map is all the fixed stars. Okay, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. Wait, what's this here? It's like the second day he looked, he found it right where the computation said. And maybe I'm getting confused with the planet Uranus, but I think it was Pluto. So we went through the great law, Newton's laws, they work, and astronomy works. We found a new planet, this is great. 50 years later, nah, you're not a planet. Just ignore that. Don't look at that man behind the curtain waving that planet. Why would they do that?
Something they don't want us to see.
They don't want you to see it. They don't want you to look at it. They don't want you to engage with it. When Pluto was discovered, it filled in a lot of gaps in astrology, which they don't want you looking at. It filled in gaps on the tree of life analysis. It made a lot of things fit and work. And now they're trying to rip that out. Well, no, that was the on button. We don't want that on button. Take the on button away. So now whole generations of students are being falsely trained. Oh no, there's only 8 major planets.
There's probably civilization that's been there or something.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know much about astrology, but it seems like, Pluto, when you read Pluto in an astrology chart, it's
important.
generational, and so it seems like it has something to do with the generation that we're in, and,
Good point. Ding.
okay.
See, I'm not good enough at astrology to declare myself an astrologer. So, but I think you're onto something there. One little event like that can totally change human consciousness. Just like this idea, here we are, we're talking about transformation and evolution of the human race, and deliberately and proactively moving evolution of the human race in a particular direction. When you think back historically at all of the problems evolution has caused since the mid-1800s, when Darwin first proposed the idea. All right. 1850s. What was the name of his ship that he was on?
Darwin?
Yeah, the Darwin was it was British Navy. It was a British Navy scientific research ship that sailed around the world. It was like a 3 or 4 year mission, and that's where he discovered data in South America and the Galapagos Islands, in particular, that led to his theory of evolution. But what was the name of the ship? This is pure trivia 111.
Darwin.
No.
Don't know.
I don't know anything about his. I know about the Scopes monkey trial.
Well, that's where we were going next.
But I don't know about his.
The name of the ship he was on was the Beagle, the HMS Beagle. Named after somebody's pet beagle, no doubt. So he produced 2 major works, probably some others. One was called The Origin of Species. The other was called The Descent of Man. And what he observed, there was several bits and pieces that were important. In South America, on the Chilean coast, he observed and witnessed an earthquake that raised the sea coast by about 10 feet. And he watched creatures that had been in tide pools were now 10 feet up in the air, and they were never going to have access to the ocean again. And he saw some of those creatures were dying and some were thriving. And then when he got up to the Galapagos Islands, there's like, 7 major islands? And it was the tortoise species and the immense differences from one island to the other, and the same bird species that had evolved with different shaped beaks to match the food that was available on this one island. And if you took a bird from this island to that island, it would have died, and vice versa. And so he looked at this specialization and the changes and these sudden cataclysmic events that could trigger these changes. And so with the data he had at the time, he wrote his books. He said he wasn't trying to be anti-Christian or anti-God. He was just saying, here's what I observed. I think this has happened. The form that life has changed. The form that man has changed over time. We know now a lot more than he did, than the data he had access to in the mid-1800s. There was a major discovery up in Canada called the Burgess Shale. It was this very high evolution or altitude up in the Canadian Rockies. And shale, of course, is a metamorphic rock that's formed from the ancient bottoms of the ocean, up at 6, 8, 10,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. And they uncovered some immensely complex and richly diverse fossils of these ancient creatures that were there, and totally revolutionized our understanding of the history of life on our planet. So Darwin didn't have that data. But there was enough people who looked at his data and were starting to take the next logical steps to analyze the change of life. And the Scopes monkey trial, it's interesting that you brought that up.
I had to be in a play in an English class in junior high school about the trial.
Okay.
I was thinking of 100 monkey when you said that.
The Scopes monkey trial is actually something I wanted to talk about today. It was in 1925 in Tennessee. And this was one of the, well, I can't say it was the first media sensation on a trial, but it's certainly one of the first trials that was for entertainment and production purposes and propaganda purposes. There was a substitute teacher named, I think, John Thomas Scopes, and he agreed to be put on trial for for violating the Butler Act, which in Tennessee was an act which said it's illegal in the state of Tennessee in a public school to teach evolution. Illegal. And so Scopes himself couldn't actually remember, did he ever teach evolution? Or if it came up, it's like, well, yeah, it's this theory. But he couldn't remember it. But he agreed to go on trial because he didn't do anything wrong. Nobody had a formal complaint against him. Student came home and said, Mommy and Daddy, the teacher today said that we evolved from monkeys. That never happened. This whole thing was set up to bring the evolution versus creation confrontation into the mainstream discussions. And so each side had a tremendously famous lawyer. I've got notes. Can't remember the names. Thought I had notes. Thought I had notes. Huh. Oh yeah, I think I know where they are. Yeah. Williams Jennings Bryant. Very famous politician and attorney, famed for having been a 3-time presidential candidate. Never was elected. Clarence Darrow was a very famous defense attorney, and they got him to defend the side of John Scopes. And really what it was a battle was, it was both a political battle and a religious battle between the fundamentalists, who believed in a strict literal interpretation of the Bible, and the modernists, who believed that humans have been blessed with this divine intelligence and we're supposed to use it. God forbid that you use your intelligence, right? But the fundamentalists say, no, whatever's in the Bible, that's the truth, and that outweighs anything you mere humans think you're coming up with. My first question to that would be, well, which Bible? Which of the several dozen versions of the Bible out there that have been mistranslated over the years and heavily edited for political purposes, which one of those is the truth you're talking about? So anyway, the trial took place, and Scopes was convicted of teaching evolution and fined $100, which is in $1925 would probably be like a few $1,000s today, $1,500, somewhere around there.
A lot of money back then.
He wasn't the one that had to pay it. It was all a show, right? And the conviction was later overturned on some legal technicality. I wish Patricia was online. She'd probably have this memorized, because I'm sure that she had to study this case in law school. Oh yeah, blah 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 blah, right? So what happened after the Scopes monkey trial that was important, and the effect that had on human consciousness. And that's why, same reason why I'm telling you, go look at these other things about human history that are being suppressed.
Like the Sphinx.
Like the Sphinx, like everything else in the What We Know site.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's history or archaeology, it's the pyramids in Montana. You knew about those, right? You learned about the pyramids we have in Montana in your grade school science class? No? Really? What about the Egyptian ruins in the Grand Canyon that they shoot you if you try to go look at? You learned about those in school, right?
No.
No.
The play or the movie Inherit the Wind came to mind, and that's probably the play that I did in junior high school. But it was a fictionalized recreation of the Scopes monkey trials.
Ah,
And it was the means to discuss McCarthyism. And
oh, okay, so that's much later than the 20s
yeah,
it was written. Okay.
so that's what they were trying to. So the thing is that it's come up a couple different times. It can't, there was the initial.
Oh, it's like
Trial
the
and-
Salem witch hunts and
Yeah.
the commie hunts and with McCartney, with all that stuff, right? The anti-communist stuff. So what happened to human consciousness is all of a sudden people who never even considered it were aware that there is a debate
Right.
between evolution and creation. And what they're all missing still, mostly to this day, is it isn't an either-or phenomenon.
It's both.
It's both, right? The scientists are really good at writing the mathematical equations for all the conditions from the instant after the Big Bang going forward in time. There's a really great book by a astrophysicist named Steve Weinberg called The First 3 Minutes. And he goes through the timeline of what was going on in the universe from, he starts like 0.00001 seconds after the Big Bang up to 3 minutes. What happened in that thing? Because what happened in those first 3 minutes is crucially what determines everything else. That determines that this table exists. Right? It's like the chaos theory, the flapping of the butterfly's wings in the Himalaya determines how big a monsoon you have in India next year.
And what was the author's name again? First three.
Steven Weinberg.
Thank you.
And what it can't answer, science can't answer, is what happened 0.0001 seconds before the Big Bang. Mathematical proofs or physics proofs, if you've ever seen them done, you'll have this big hairy mess over here, and then it'll say, it can be shown that this condenses down to this equation over here. Well, the mathematical proof and process might be 50 pages of work that took a dozen people 10 years. Right? And so there's this joke among science students, it's like, oh, you wave the hands and magic happens and out pops this, right? And one of my undergrad physics professors was notorious for giving us one of these problems and saying, okay, given this, prove this. That's your midterm exam.
So,
So off to the library we'd all go. We'd all be over in the library fighting over the books and looking at these graduate level textbooks and pulling out somebody's PhD thesis from 50 years ago, which is now published as a book, and we're like, you walk in with your 20 pages and go, and of course Dr. Gunsel would know the right things. He'd say, oh, did you do that? He'd grade this 20 pages in like a minute. Yep, A. Oh no, you missed that one here, B, kind of
oh
thing.
yeah?
That's the kind of geeky life I used to lead, yeah. But the Scopes monkey trial, I remember being an undergrad in college, having these philosophical debates, sitting around on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and it's evolution, creation, God, and then it's like back then I was really good at having the left brain answers. I hadn't yet had any of my major spiritual experiences. And the ones I was having, I was suppressing. But we would talk about it, and the Scopes monkey trial came up. And that's probably the first time I actually heard of it. I don't even know if I learned about the Scopes monkey trial in high school. I learned about it in college. But it totally changed American culture. After that, it became fair game to have a conversation about creation versus evolution. And it opened the mind of a lot of people, and it closed the minds of a lot of people on each side, right? There are people, hardcore science, this is the only way, I'm not looking over there. The creation, the hardcore, oh, this is, no, we don't believe in science. We don't go there. Right? We just don't go do science.
It's like my mom went to her grave not believing in dinosaurs.
Right.
She says, oh, they just find bones and they put them together and create these things.
Where did the bones come from, Mom? Really? What happens when we find all the bones laid out nice and neat, embedded in rock?
On the other side, she's with dinosaurs.
Right?
She's riding one right now.
That'd be funny. Good old Nancy. So, the experience of being human has this purpose of preparing us for something massive. And just that knowledge is part of what's being suppressed. So you've really got to stop letting other people think for you. You've got to stop letting the evening news tell you what to think.
This is the new normal.
This is the new normal. One of the first instances that I encountered on that was in medicine. Right? I'm out doing my holistic thing and I learn about the phenomenon of low body temperatures. You go to med school, they teach you, oh, fever is bad, that means you're fighting an infection, so let's get the fever down, because the fever gets too high, it can cause brain damage, especially in children. Of course, what they don't tell you is you never get fevers that high if you have proper mineral supplementation. So nutrition will prevent that. But fevers equals infections equals bad, therefore no fever is good, even if that allows the bacteria to proliferate and cause other organ damage. So we'd start seeing all these people who come in, they have all the signs of being sick, but their temperature is 98.6. Maybe even so, maybe it's 98.2. Right? And so a lot of doctors, a lot of places figured out that when these guys were healthy walking around, they weren't at a normal body temperature of 98.6. They were low. 97s, 96s, even in the 95s. And every organ system is suboptimal. And there's something called Wilson's temperature syndrome now, which is a documented combination of mechanisms of actions for how that comes to pass. And the treatment is very simple for most of the time. It involves iodine. So it doesn't involve prescription drugs. Ergo, it's not popular with Big Pharma. And I had a patient that I was explaining all this to once, and she says, oh yeah, my temperature is always low. And I go, really? Well, what do they say when you go to your insurance company doctor? Oh, they say that's the new normal. Like, well, it certainly wasn't the normal when we were born, and our genetics in our genome, while I've been alive, haven't changed, right? We need that 98.6 to have all the enzymes in our body function, because they're designed to be temperature dependent. So to change the genome that significantly would require many, many generations. And it would require some kind of driving force to say, oh, well, we gotta cool our bodies down. There has to be a reason. Either we're overcoming something environmental, or there'll be an advantage, like there's a new heat-seeking predator on here, and if we lower our temperature a couple degrees, we'll survive, right?
Mm-hmm. It's an evolution thing.
Right. But yeah, the new normal on the temperature, the new normal on tornadoes in places of the country that never had them before.
But Pluto's not a planet.
And Pluto's not a planet, that's the new normal.
That's been debunked. Pluto.
Yeah, that's fake news. Pluto is fake news. So the Scopes monkey trial is a really good So the Scopes monkey trial changed the consciousness about human evolution. And I actually picked it to talk about tonight. And I didn't tell her.
About a plant.
Yeah, she's not a plant. She just picked up on it.
I was in the play.
And because we're talking about human evolution. Now, what's the equivalent? What are some of the things that...
Well, I was going to ask, don't you think that's what's playing out in politics right now? You know, where well, we got to pull all the white supremacists out of the closet and put them against
Right. You pick an issue,
whatever it is, and it's all just a setup. It doesn't mean that people don't really die or get hurt, but it's staged, and in one way, it's desensitizing us to these subjects that, just like what the white supremacist. I mean, they haven't dared come out of the closet for the last 60 years, and now all of a sudden it's like a president says it's okay to be like that, and so that's their opportunity to come out, and it's kind of like a challenge. It's like, who's going to say anything about it? And so I think as a culture, anyway, we're kind of being challenged to say, are we going to allow these type of things to keep happening?
Right.
Or as a community, are we going to say, no, that's just not acceptable?
So racism is one. Country of origin.
I thought you were going to say country western.
I know.
No,
I like both kinds of music, country and western. No, there's a lot of issues like that, right? But specifically in terms of human evolution, it's the God versus no God, right? So religion and spirituality are under attack. God is under attack.
But even
and
science
it's treated as faint, as quaint folk beliefs.
Yeah, and like what the administration's doing with science and no climate warming.
Well, that's a complicated issue because the Earth is changing.
Yeah, right.
And both sides of the political spectrum have their argument for short-term monetary gains, and none of them are right. And most of the data they're cherry picking has been taken and selecting data points after the climate modification program started back in the 1950s, because it's been going on that long, it turns out. So that's a whole other, I'm going to do a whole series on that at some point.
It's like the movie, what was it, Wag the Dog, when that whole, they created that whole war that was totally fake, and they had everyone believing it.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with the news.
That's what's
right
going
now.
on with Syria, with the Middle East, with Afghanistan. With,
ISIS.
Yeah. ISIS was created by a combination of the CIA, British intelligence, and the Mossad. It never existed. We declared this war on terror. Oh, well, we got what's his bucket, so now what do we do? We need a new enemy. Let's make one up.
Gotta have an enemy. Since Russia's not an enemy anymore.
We were supplying the ISIS all their weapons. We had our people on the ground wearing ISIS clothes. This was all proven. And you get most people going, yeah, oh, we got ISIS, oh yeah. It's just brainwashed, right? That's why you need to turn off the television. The frequencies in television use technology that is very specifically designed to change your cognitive abilities in a negative way. It's in my book. It's in the mental and emotional health chapter of Heal Your Life, Heal the World.
So is most of the gaming out there do the same thing?
I don't think most of the gaming does the same thing. The computer, the internet, is got certain frequencies. Certainly Facebook has some of them. Gaming the gaming can be very addictive. You just sit back and look at gaming. So whether it's computer or television or watching a movie or whatever, my advice is do it with a specific intent. If you have trouble following it, then write your intent down. Set an alarm clock. I'm going to be on the computer for 20 minutes. I'm going to research these 3 things, and that's it. No Facebook, no random surfing on the internet, no random surfing on YouTube. Have an intent. And then when the alarm goes off, oh, okay, I'm done. Oh, I didn't do any of the things I sat down. Okay. Then you force yourself to wait 2 hours before you go back. And this time, have the same intent and do what you're there to do. And the Akadu energy. Holding the Akadu energy, if you don't have it, you need to get it, because that's a really good way to filter out and neutralize all those negative frequencies. It's
And
just,
the 5G and all that.
yeah. Well, the 5G is a whole other issue, right? But yeah, it will be a certain defense against that. So absolutely, you need to be aware of what's going on. Don't use the ostrich school of philosophy. Your head in the hole in the ground. Which is actually a misnomer. They weren't sticking their head in the hole in the ground. Ostriches have these little tiny heads and their eyes are too close together, right? So their telescopic vision isn't very good. Your binocular vision, right? The wider your eyes are set apart, the better you can triangulate where the danger is coming from. So ostriches have these long necks and the long legs to run away out on the plains, and they use vertical binocular vision. They stick their head up here,
Talk to the camera.
and then they stick their head down here, and they go up and they down, and then they look at both places. So if they go down and it looks from a distance like their head's in a bush or underground, that's what made people think they were just putting their head down, thinking that they would hide from danger. They know better. They're there.
Dumb humans.
They've got those legs. The ostrich, they stand 7 or 8 feet tall to the top of their head. When I lived in Florida, there was a place nearby that had ostriches. They had a citrus grove, and then they had ostriches running around in there, and I guess they raised them for the ostrich eggs or the ostrich meat or something. And they would come over and they'd eat out of your hand. These huge birds coming up and eating out of your hand, right? And then you'd give them bread or whatever, and they're huge. But they run really fast. Faster than people run. They can get away from most predators out there on the plains. So that vertical binocular vision thing, that's what they're doing. But we use the analogy because it gets the point through, because enough people in the consciousness believe that ostriches stick their head in the sand to not have to deal with reality, that it works. So I use it. But at least I tell you that it's a false construct of human collective consciousness. So, where does all this lead us? What's next?
To figure out what we should be creating in the universe. To help
That's
go
a good
along.
answer. Ding. 2 dings. Ding, ding. Yeah, to figure it out.
And what our script is.
Yeah, what are you here to do? So, how do you wake up 1 billion people who are fighting valiantly to stay asleep? That's what the great work's always been about, in part.
We do it by waking ourselves up and
That's the
doing our
first step.
contract.
Yeah.
And working together in a small pog, not
Mhm.
too big, to work together to send the forge out.
This is how we we have to reprogram the human collective consciousness. That's basically a key. We have to be injecting a coherent signal. And by coherent, I mean the same thing as like laser light, like we have this little laser thing over here that's changing color, compared to the candle. Right? Coherent light, non-coherent light. If we send a coherent signal into the human collective consciousness with factual data, and we have to try a lot of different methods to get the message out.
That was like that mantra we were all doing.
Which
What was, about believing in God is real and.
Oh yeah. That's what we were doing back end of last year, beginning of this
Right.
year. That group activity that we did, and it had an effect. So
Yeah.
now we get more people doing those kinds of things, and we're going to come back to that activity later.
Because we sent the ping out.
Right. So we need to put that signal out there that makes the current signals in the collective consciousness obsolete. Just like the Scopes monkey trial woke up a lot of people to the notion that there's more data out here than I'm being told in my small town church. And this data appears to be factual, right? We're digging up fossils, we're digging up this information. Here's scientifically documented evidence that can't be ignored. We've got pyramids in Montana. We've got Egyptian ruins in Arizona, or Egyptian appearing ruins in Arizona. Almost as if Egypt and the ruins in Arizona had a common parent civilization that created those. I wonder where that could have been. So that's a bit of a bigger picture about this humanity experience. You're here literally to gain experience. This is on-the-job training to becoming like God.
So what's like the first step? I mean, it's like, are we talking just theoretically here about what we can do collectively as a group for humanity? Or how do we then apply these concepts to our daily life?
Okay. That's the $64,000 question. Ding, 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 ding.
All right.
Boy, you're a ding happy today.
Dingy.
She's ding happy. Or a ding bat, I'm not sure what
No.
it is. No. Well, the first thing is what she said. You got to wake yourself up. You develop all the skills. This is what the Toltec work is about, right? You upgrade your own consciousness, okay? It can happen quickly. It's just like those 3D pictures, right? You're looking at it and it's just this void, this vague shapes, and all of a sudden, boom. You're training your neurons to look at that mass and smears of color a different way. And then all of a sudden the picture snaps into focus and you go, oh, it's a horse running in a meadow. And everybody else is looking like, it's just a bunch of paint smears. No, you stand here and you look a different way. And that's I remember when those things first came out. And the people who could see them, everybody else thought we were nuts. And these 3D pictures then teach you, oh, there's another way of looking at all this data out here. So you have to have an openness to your mind and a willingness to engage. Okay? I think that it helps people to go back and look at some of this history. Pick whichever field of history into, whether it's art or science or archaeology, or ancient shipbuilding, ancient sail making. Pick one. Phoenicians in South America, Indian ruins in Central America. One of the questions that hasn't been asked is, what if it's Central American ruins in India? What if the Central Americans discovered India, not the other way around? What's your question?
Well, I don't have a question. I discovered something playing around with the Ottawa that I brought the reed in for the healing, and we were
Right.
in the reed. So I firmly believe it feels like a knowing for me that the Toltecs use the reed. They're not just people of the reed. They use the reed to do what they needed to do, like build things, science, astronomy, and everything.
Yeah.
So
It's part of the link. It's part of the link. So Tula means the place of the reeds. And archaeologists and historians always interpreting that, oh, well, it must have been a place located near a swamp at that time that had reeds and cattails growing. That's the mundane explanation. Maybe not. But it's when you can tap in with your higher vision and you train your higher vision and you start believing what you're getting through your higher vision and you see the energy structures in a human organism, how beautifully elegant they are and how complex they are, then you go, oh, that's what they mean by the reed. Right? You see it.
and there's a generator inside the reed too.
Yeah. That's the link. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
So the steps is you have to do this work, and the work involves a personal practice. Right? If you're just going to be here and participate in humanity at the level of watching the movie passively, this isn't the work for you, and you're not going to be of significant help to the progression of humanity. And as far as many of us would be concerned, that's a waste of an incarnation. When you look at how elegantly complex one human organism is, and the fact that we aren't just a cup of salt water that learned to go for a walk on land, we are actually the ocean walking on land. An ocean is a very different concept than just a cup of salt water. You know, I can go pour some water and pour some salt in. Oh, it's salt water. It's different than the ocean. I go scoop out the ocean. I've got everything that's in the ocean. I take a scoop out of the consciousness of God and I put it down in this avatar over here, or that one, or this one. We're more than just a bag of meat and bones with some salt water that evolved to take the bag of salt water for a walk. We're a bag of God going for a walk. So if you're not going to engage at that level, I can't help you. But to tell you that there's something else possible. That work, that daily work, there's a discipline involved. The first discipline is just showing up. No excuses. Do your dream journaling. Do your meditations. Journal the results of your meditations. Read and gain the knowledge. I mean, humans have fought and died for the right to have printing presses and spread knowledge. When we codified the rights that our country has in the Bill of Rights, in our Constitution, the First Amendment, the very first aspect literally is the freedom of religion, and it also, the First Amendment includes freedom of the press. The freedom to write and say whatever I want and to share it with whomever wants it wants that information. And those are the kind of rights and freedoms that are under attack now by saying, oh, well, we should put people in jail if they say something offensive. I just saw a poll today on the internet that, oh yeah, certain percentage of people under a certain age believe that, yeah, if you disagree with me, you should go to jail. That's dangerous thought.
That's McCarthyism.
That's worse than McCarthyism. So the discipline to show up and do that, to do your meditations, your dreaming, your journaling, your practices on attention, your practices on maintaining your intent of knowing what you're doing and why every moment of the day. If you're tired and you're going to sleep, don't pretend to keep working and not concentrating. Just say, I'm tired, I'm going to take a nap. And then take your nap and then get up and do your work. If you're hungry, go eat. But don't be mindlessly shoving food in your face while you're watching the TV, trying to read, and surfing the internet all at the same time.
I'm not even that good.
Yeah. So it's really, there's a level of discipline and rigor that's required to start developing. And you can get it a lot of different ways. You know, EJ, he'll teach you to play the flute, and then he'll teach you to play the guitar, and then he'll teach you to do art. And then he'll teach you something else, right? I just stand around and hit you with sticks or swords. Tell you to move faster. But this humanity experience, it's important to know what we really are. We are here for higher purpose.
The church sure doesn't want you to know that.
Yeah, most churches don't want you to know that. Most churches. And the church, the Roman Catholic Church, historically killed a lot of people who tried to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Or threatened to shut them up. This knowledge supersedes almost everything else. Yeah, there's 1,000 valid issues or more going on in the world, all of which need attention. And I'm not telling you don't get involved in the issues that are near and dear to your heart. I've spent a couple of decades now working on the area of health and healing, and that's morphed into spirituality and consciousness, which is where I've taken that. Health is a means to an end, this much higher end. It's not the end in and of itself. If there's some aspect of the health equation that you're out there about, like no GMOs or no vaccinations or whatever, fine, that needs to be done. But do try to maintain that higher awareness while all that's going on with your second, third, and 18th attentions.
Didn't Jesus say you could do what I do, but you could do it better, or
Oh, yeah.
something like that?
Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth in me, the things that I do shall he do also, and even greater things than these shall he do. That's the way I learned it in the versions of the Bible I have studied. It's actually it's probably my single favorite quote of any ancient scripture.
Where is that so I can write it down?
think it's Matthew 12:14 or Matthew 14:12. I'll look it up later, but I
Okay,
think
thank
that's
you.
what it is. Is my phone here? No.
I'll look it up.
That's cool that you can recite it just like that.
Can't recite the whole Bible just like that, but you picked one that I know. So we have, and that's a good segue that kind of brings all this to close.
Yeah.
We have divine beings telling us we're divine beings, and then it becomes kind of a WTF are you doing issue.
Yeah, but the church sure doesn't push that.
No.
I mean, the Vatican.
The Vatican, no. No, I mean, that's really it in a nutshell, right there, that quote.
Mhm. And he's telling us that we could do miracles.
Yep.
So we are gods.
Mhm.
Jesus said so.
So, next week, we're going to be talking about and looking at more of the question that was brought up here of like, how do we get started, what's next? If we're going to accept
The challenge.
the challenge of we're here for something more important than slogging through rush hour traffic to drink beer and watch sitcoms, then what's next? So that's kind of where we're going to go. Any online questions?
Serenity says hi.
Hi, Serenity.
Mohadib says she's guilty of that kind of multitasking.
Well,
I told her earlier to keep both hands on the wheel.
the key for you, Muad'Dib, is the concept of intent and attention. It's sort of like the first two things you ever heard me say about Toltec philosophy is just remember those. And it sounds like an alarm going.
Yeah.
It's not your phone, is it? So where's your phone at?
I don't know. I was looking for it a minute ago. And
It's like vibrating
It's
the whole
going-
house, but it sounds like it's upstairs.
yeah, I could have left it upstairs.
Anyway,
Anyway, that's the that's where we're going. Is what's next? Because the humanity experience that's weird. That phone's doing it. The humanity
Sounds
experience
like it's in the kitchen.
can be a lot more powerful than we're making it. Like the quote Yvonne referenced, everything Christ did we can do and more. We have this potential, but some assembly is required. That is just strange.
it's vibrating the whole house wherever it's at.
Well, we're almost done. Any questions here in the studio audience?
Where do we go for miracle training school?
I think you're here. What do we got coming up Saturday? Anything?
Oh, Saturday, November 2nd is the Book of the Dead workshop.
Okay.
And then in the evening, there's a potluck and a ceremony for All Souls Day. So if you can't come but would like to send ahead your names, we'll put those on the altar.
So what all do we need? Do we need pictures?
We really just need the name, but if you're actually going to be here, you're welcome to bring something for the altar, and it can be a picture of a loved one or a sacred object, and you're welcome to take them with you when you leave, or else they'll be released into the wild.
So do you need names? Do you need birth dates, death dates,
I
birthplaces,
just need
death
their
dates?
name.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Just want to make it clear what's
Yep.
required. I'd hate to have somebody lost in the Bardos because we didn't have his middle name or we didn't have his place of birth or something that we could have gotten.
So we are going to have. I mean, you can attend that class online.
Okay?
It's $50, and so just let me know so you can get the secret passwords.
Yeah, it's gonna be on Zoom. So anybody who signs up remotely, we will send you an email with a password. It'll be a link, you click on the link, it'll take you to a page. If you already have the Zoom software on your computer, don't start that. Just go to a browser window, click the link in the email, and then a page will appear, and you have to type in the password. And it'll be something complicated with lots of, non-printing characters and squiggles, and now we'll make it easy.
So just remember that you need to activate your sound and your video when you go into those
Right.
chats.
The thing pops up, and I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's like, do you want to release your video out into the group? Hit yes. And then do you want to have your microphone going out in your group? You hit yes. And depending on background noise where you're at, you may be asked at different times to turn that off. And mute your microphone unless you want to say something. So that's coming up this Saturday.
And can we watch it later if we attend on Zoom?
We'll see how it all works. I
We'll
mean,
see
right
how-
now, if it's only going to be Maria, we might just have her as a laptop entity, and I don't know if we'll record it all, but
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it for today. Don't forget, you're not a cup of salt water. You're a cup of God walking around. So finish your training. All right, do good, avoid evil, everybody.
Good job.